Hey guys, today we're going to talk about World War II. Now I know that there's a lot in World War II and there's no way I can possibly cover everything, so this is something you really enjoy. I'm happy to give you some resources, but for our purposes today I'm just going to do an overview of World War II. So just like in World War I, we have two sides. On the Allied side we have Great Britain, France, eventually the United States, and eventually Russia. On the Axis side we have Germany, Japan, and Italy. Now, we've talked in World War I that there was kind of a two-front war. It's not that simple in World War II. We kind of have the European area, which is also North Africa, and we have the Pacific area. So we're going to start with Europe first. Remember, the European World War II is going to start when Germany invades Poland. Germany is then going to turn its eyes on France, takes France very quickly. The Schlieffen Plan from World War I, that, they didn't get very far. They're going back and forth on this line forever. It doesn't take them any time at all in World War II to take over France. Germany is able to take over Germany and Italy are able to take over most of Western Europe except for a few neutral countries. But Germany can't get Great Britain. Just like Napoleon, it's hard to take over Great Britain because they're an island, so you can't do a land invasion very well. And so Germany bombs Great Britain in what's known as the Blitzkrieg. Hit them hard, hit them fast to take over the area. We're successful for them, and France doesn't in Great Britain because the British people are going to basically hunker down and wait it out. The saying, keep calm and carry on, was invented during the war to strengthen the British people, to strengthen their will, to strengthen their courage. And so Germany is going to heavily bomb Great Britain, and it's not going to get them anywhere. Germany and Great Britain, since they don't fight each other very much, land battle in Europe. They do in North Africa, again, making this a somewhat in Europe thing. Basically they have their colonies and have soldiers in their colonies and from Europe fighting each other in North Africa. Germany is going to take back its promise that, Hitler made Stalin, made Russia. It's going to invade Russia. Big mistake. Big mistake. And at first, Russia's totally off guard. They didn't expect this. But it takes them a while to get together. But when they get together, it was the worst decision Hitler ever made. It's hard to win a land war in Russia. It's especially hard during the winter because Russian winters are harsh. So no one can win a Russian war against Russia in the winter unless you're the Mongols. Battle of Stalingrad is probably the worst battle in Europe, and that's going to be between Germany and the Soviet Union or Russia. During the winter, and the Soviets not only bomb the Germans, but if there's a cluster of Germans and like one or two Soviets there, they'll bomb their own people to get rid of the Germans. Starve the Germans out, they can't survive the winter. It's a heavy loss for the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's going to have, more heavy casualties than any other player in the war. But they're able to, win this out, and Stalingrad is going to be a turning point in the war in Europe. Eventually, the United States gets involved. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And they will help the British North Africa, and then Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, who will later become President Eisenhower, comes up with this plan to retake France. They storm Normandy Beach, retake France, and eventually push their way into Berlin. Germany has one more ditch effort, one last ditch effort to retake France, known as the Battle of the Bulge. Not successful. The Allied powers are able to take over Berlin, Hitler kills himself, and Germany surrenders. Okay, in the Pacific part of the war, Japan invades China, remember the Rape of Nanking, but also invades like Burma, Indonesia, Hong Kong, a lot of areas in Southeast Asia. They fight against the British in Australia and New Zealand. And then the United States comes in. So the Japanese didn't like the United States. They felt they were a threat because of their position in Hawaii. And they, being the Japanese, wanted to be the dominant force in the Pacific. And also, Japan has no natural resources. And during, one of our earlier wars, the United States basically had an oil embargo on Japan because they were with the other side. and that really angered Japan. So they have this pent-up aggression and pent-up anger against the United States. So bomb Pearl Harbor against the wishes of Hitler. Big mistake. And it gets the United States involved. The strategy in the Pacific was known as island hopping, so instead of invading Japan directly, the United States took over islands around Japan and basically hopped their way into finally getting Japan. But the Japanese spirit couldn't be broken very easily. These are kamikaze fighters that would suicide bomb themselves, basically crash their planes into ships to help win the war. So it was very hard. The war in Europe was over, and the war in the Pacific was still going on, couldn't break the spirit, and President Truman came to the decision to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in his mind, doing so would save more American lives than if we continued with this war. So they first dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, knocked out population, even surrounding areas, had consequences. People who survived that were near the blast or near the radius, anything they were wearing would be imprinted on their skin forever. Cancer is going to run rapid in those areas. Japanese still don't surrender, so they do the same in Nagasaki, and eventually Japan will surrender after that. The three new weapons that were used during the war are planes, tanks, and the atomic bomb. And again, much like in World War I, World War II is total war, so the home front is involved. Government controls a lot of the means of production. We see propaganda being used. We see women go into the factories and get more rights because of it. And also, since we have film more so at this time than we did World War I, they're going to use films as means of propaganda. If you can go back and watch old Disney cartoons, very much, yay United States, boo the Nazis. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of World War II. We'll talk about kind of the wrap-up of World War II and how it will lead to the Cold War in another video. I'll see you next time.